Good evening to all of you. We welcome you all to the third Let's Talk session for this year, organized by the IEEE Young Professionals Sri Lanka under the topic Innovation in a Time of Crisis. Let's Talk is a series of sessions organized by the IEEE Young Professionals Sri Lanka to educate young professionals on timely matters and non-technical skills that are required to shape up their careers. Our guest speaker for the day is Mr. Alagan Mahalingam, the founder and CEO of Root Code Labs. He is a serial entrepreneur, a software architect, and an investor. His company provides software product engineering services to businesses internationally. Root Code Labs has offices both in Sri Lanka and Estonia. He is also the founder of Serve, a mobile application that helps you book and have a one-to-one video call with an expert from any industry to learn, solve, and improve yourself. Since we are going through a time of crisis, we hope this session will be valuable to you, especially since these unprecedented times have created both the necessity and opportunities for innovation. Before we begin the session, let me give you a small heads up as to how we will be conducting the Q&A session. To post your questions, we have shared a link with you in the confirmation emails that we have sent. You can post the questions you have to that link, and at the end of the talk, the Q&A session will be carried out. Without further ado, let's start the session. Over to you, Mr. Mahalingam.
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. Hope everybody's having a great time. It's a very interesting topic that we are going to speak about, and I'm fortunate enough to have gone through some sort of product development and innovation during this pandemic, and so that kind of enables me to be able to share some of my experiences, so that if there is anybody out there who is trying to do something, hopefully it helps. That's the goal of this. So I'm going to break down my session today into 5 major points, and at the end of the session we'll be open for questions. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask in the chat or post it in the Facebook Live, so that I can take it up at the end. The first point that I wanted to share is the whole understanding about a crisis. As humans, we are naturally risk averse, right? I'm pretty sure everybody can relate to that. We always look for safety. We always look for stability. We always think about an ideal world where everything is perfect, right? And crisis kind of destroys that whole essence of what we have been believing in about how life operates. Not every generation is fortunate enough to go through a crisis, but we are one of those generations which gets to see and experience a global crisis like what we are having because of the COVID-19 outbreak. If you look deeply into the history of mankind, we have had many crises throughout the history of mankind. One thing that we can very easily relate to is the Spanish flu and the Greatest Depression that happened in the early 1900s. People tend to relate it to the COVID-19 crisis because that is again a health-related pandemic, and it kind of made the whole world shut down for a very long time. And right now what we are having is not very different, because the GDP decline that we see in many countries is similar to that of the Great Depression. It looks like we are in the first phase of the pandemic, so we don't know whether there will be a second phase. And what happened with the Great Depression was it lasted for many years, and it kind of brought the whole market down, and it took years and a world war to end the whole crisis. And none of us were there, not even most of our parents were there, our grandparents would have been there. Then the other crisis that we faced sort of in our lifetime, but if you are too young, you wouldn't have been a part of it, but it was not again a global crisis, which is the 2008 financial crisis, which was a big hit to businesses, especially in the US and the world, because the world kind of denominates their reserves and currency based on United States dollars. So that kind of created a crisis. And it lasted for a while, but then things got back to normal. Now, when we think about a crisis, it's very normal for us to go down into kind of a shell where we start thinking, all right, everything is unfair. Everything is against us. The whole universe is against us. And even the greatest thinkers, even the greatest entrepreneurs tend to kind of shut themselves down during a crisis like that, because for a lot of factors, we tend to not take risky steps because of the crisis. But one thing that we should never forget is chaos is a ladder. Some people say it's a ladder. And then crisis also creates opportunities for the people who are ready to face the crisis, not for everybody. But it's extremely hard to spot an opportunity in a crisis because everybody is in a survival mode and we are trying to cover our base, and it's extremely tough. But if we develop a kind of a mindset towards facing a crisis, kind of understanding that the only way out of a crisis is to survive and to also identify the problems that you can innovate on. And that is my first point. Crisis happens in history. This is not a very new thing. It has happened before. And all the greatest inventions, a lot of greatest inventions were made during a crisis. Think about some of the household tech companies. Think about Airbnb, think about Uber, think about Slack. All of them, think about Stripe, all of them were built during the 2008 financial crisis. So crisis should not stop us as innovators, as entrepreneurs. And if you take crisis in the right way, you could use that opportunity to grow. That's my first point. Number two is be ready to innovate. This is regardless of the crisis. Whether there is a crisis or not, always be ready to innovate. If you are one of the very young people who is hustling to do something, then you are naturally ready to innovate at any point. But if you are a team, or if you are a startup, and if you have friends who are willing to just come up and work together, nurture this whole attitude of fantasizing about innovation, because that's extremely essential. For us, I'm very fortunate to have a beautiful team in Root Code. And over the years, we have built kind of a very good approach where we respect innovation at any cost. And because we all naturally are innovation seekers, a crisis like this kind of sparked interest in all of our minds. And we were naturally ready to innovate, and we started looking into all the opportunities out there, what other things we could do. Number three is, let's say you identify an opportunity. All right, let's assume. Let's assume you kind of found out a great opportunity in the middle of this crisis. That means you found out a solution that needs to be built, or you found out a gap in the market that you want to enter into. You see kind of services like e-commerce and everything has completely transformed because of the pandemic. We used to think about technology as kind of a luxury, and then some of these services as it's good to have. Even like what you are looking at, what we are using right now, Zoom, it literally tripled its revenue during the pandemic. So all these nice to have tools kind of became essential. And it's kind of a great realization, and that creates the opportunity for anybody to ride the wave if you are ready. when you find an opportunity and when you decide to implement or build something, you get to this the point zero of building anything great. The ground zero of building anything great is to find a solution that people really need. It can be a big solution, it can be a small solution, but find a solution that the world needs at that point. And because most of the time we end up building things that nobody really needs. And I have been building all my life things that nobody used, and you build an app and then you put it out, you're very excited, and then you realize, oh shit, nobody is using it. Nobody wants to use it, or nobody would want to pay for it. And I've had that iteration many times. And that took me to a point where I realized the importance of creating a solution that is needed for the market. So make sure the idea that you come up with is extremely important, and it's very needed, small or big. So that's the third main point. So for us, in fact, what happened in that was, let me just roll back to the last week of March. And it was one of the most stressful weeks stressful time I've ever had in my whole journey of being an entrepreneur. You build an organization, and then you build a team. You have people who are working extremely hard. You have great clients from all around the world. You enjoy what you are doing. Everybody's having a good time, and then boom, suddenly the world comes to a stop. The older rules didn't apply anymore. The world is not the same anymore. And everybody, regardless of the industry, everybody got affected. And it all crunches down to everybody. And the last week of March, I had continuous calls with many of my clients who were going through a really tough time. From the North America to Europe, everything was shut down. The clients in the retail space, clients in different industries, the client-facing industries, everybody got shut down, and everybody was struggling to meet ends. and naturally, during a crisis, your main focus is to survive, right? And when you want to survive, you would not spend money or time in building software or building things that are considered innovation or tech. So it was kind of a big shock for the whole ecosystem, including us. And that's when we started thinking, all right, so for us to survive, you got to do something that's more important during the crisis and after the crisis. And we started looking out for ideas. My whole team was kind of very energetic. They were like in a very much of a fight mode. So we still keep talking. We still keep thinking as to what do we need to do to survive this crisis. And we also came across a lot of our friends in different industries. For example, psychologists, mentors, to personal coaches, to fitness instructors, yoga instructors, cooks, to trainers, everybody. We heard again and again very unfortunate, sad stories from them, saying their whole existence of business depends on meeting people, right? Their whole existence depends on talking to customers, to face-to-face, or like trading with the customers. And all of a sudden, it's no more that. They can't do it anymore. They can't do trainings anymore. They can't see a client or a patient anymore. And that was the time they started thinking, right, can I do it online? Can I do it on, let's say, Skype or Zoom? And again, there was another problem in that, because tools like Zoom or Skype are video conferencing tools. So the problem they are solving is enabling customers and users to have video communication without any disruption. But that's not a business model, because if you want to run a business, you need to be able to charge your customers for that, right? And there is no single platform where you can go and say like, all right, I want a personal coach today. And you go in and then find look through all the best coaches, read the reviews, and book somebody so that they can call you and then talk to you. Or the same goes for a therapy or psychologist. You need help. Let's say you need emotional help, and there's no way for us to go and find the best people and then book them and then have a video call. Then, because we heard all these stories, I mean, we realized that there is a problem. We realized there is an opening. And we started searching. All right, so somebody would have done it. The world is so big, right? Somebody would have done it. And to our surprise, we looked everywhere. We could not find a solution like this, where you could go and find an expert from any industry and have a video call one-to-one. It wasn't there. And the experts were complaining like they can't collect payments. They need to tell people to deposit money, and then like they need to make a Skype call. There's no flawless way to do that. And when I brought this to the team and when I started talking about it, the team said, I mean, we need to build this. They said, like, if nobody has done it, let's do it. Why not? And then we started sketching. So we started kind of drawing in papers about all right, how that needs to be, what's the best way to do this. And all of a sudden, we were invited to participate in one of the biggest hackathons in the world called the Global Hack. It was partially organized by the European Commission, a great, massive competition. I still remember when I signed up and got into their Slack workspace, there were like 12,000 people in that. So we just had like rough sketches of how we want the app to be, nothing else. And when I got to know about the Global Hack, the hackathon is supposed to start the next day on a Friday. And it was a 48 hours long hackathon. And the advantage in participating is you would be able to validate your idea. You'll be able to pitch your idea to a much bigger audience. You will get feedback from great people in the industry. And we could not miss it. So I put a Slack message to everybody, do you want to participate in this? Because it's the Easter weekend and everybody was supposed to be off. But my team said, no, let's do that. We started participating. We got into the competition, and we are supposed to build a prototype. So over the 48 hours, my whole team who wanted to work on it worked extremely hard to build a working prototype with payments and end-to-end a video. And it was very interesting to see people really loved our idea. And I think a lot of people were looking forward for a solution like that. And when we did that, we heard from amazing mentors who said, it's a great idea. The way you guys are implementing is right. And we ended up winning the global hack. We came first in the work track. So that was a great chance for us to validate the idea, because most of the time as entrepreneurs, we go in to build ideas that are not necessarily validated. We go in to build ideas because we think it's cool. We think it will work out. But doing something on a global scale like that and kind of getting the validation put us on track, I must say. And the next 4 weeks, we spent day and night to build the app. It was a prototype. We built it to last much longer with much lower latency and to handle like hundreds of thousands of users. And we launched it and we are live, and it's great to see a lot of people using the app, experts coming and saying, hey, now I can do counseling sessions because I never had a way to do this before. and people from worldwide. We named it Serve, by the way, CRW, serve.io. It was, everybody starts telling us the great experience they have, and that kind of kept us going. So my third point in idea, make sure the idea that you come up with and the idea that you're trying to implement is actually needed. Where we got really fortunate is we decided to put all our energy into something that people actually want. And when you are solving a problem that people really want, then you naturally have a market traction, you naturally have a penetration. And so if you are building an idea during a crisis or not, always make sure that your idea, the solution that you are giving is actually needed, right? So that's my third point. Let me get into my point number 4. The point number 4 is execution. Like I said before, the same rules don't apply anymore. Until you get into a crisis like this, you would never understand the importance of being fast, right? Because usually fast speed means you do it better, you do it faster, or you bring it out faster, right? But in a crisis, fast means attraction, fast means survival, and fast means solving the problems faster, because you are already in a crisis, right? It's like you were pushed off, you're falling off a cliff, and then you're trying to learn to fly, or like build a parachute or something. So every day, every week that you delay would actually affect the whole business and the worthiness of your idea. So when you want to build an idea during a crisis, your execution has to be extremely fast. That means there are trade-offs. You're not going to have comfortable months. You're going to have sleepless nights, and not you, the whole team. And if everybody is not as passionate as you are to build the idea, and if everybody does not see the vision, you can never, ever execute with the new rules of a crisis. I'm really fortunate to have an amazing team which really believes in the vision, which really puts all they have day and night. I think for the first 2 weeks, first 4 weeks, my whole team would have slept like 3 to 4 hours a day, and they were working the rest of the hours. And that's why we went from prototype to production in 4 weeks. So the point number 4 is the way you execute, and how fast you execute in the crisis with the new rules. My point number 5, and my last point, is about improving and adapting. As you can imagine, building a potentially million user base app within 4 weeks is not necessarily practical. You are going to have compromises. You are going to have quality issues. You are going to take shortcuts, and you have to take shortcuts because you are trying to do something very fast, right? The trade-off between features, the trade-off between the way you implement things, there'll be a lot of compromises throughout the product. And when we launched Serve at the end of the first 4 weeks, that's when we realized, all right, so we are not going to rest because it's launched, because we know the potential of an app like that, and we know the kind of the impact it can make. And we also owe to our users, because we need to make sure the user experience is so smooth. And that's when we decided we are going to keep hustling till we improve the product. When you decide to improve, you will improve the architecture, You will improve the user experience flow. You will bring in new features. For example, when we launched at first, Serve had listings where you can see the experts from different industries. You can go in to see more details, and you can book them, and the expert will get a notification. They can call you on video. We wanted to make sure the video call is flawless. We wanted to make sure that the video call is of the highest quality technically possible. And sometimes it's funny, like some of our users say the video quality is even better than WhatsApp. And we started improving the quality to get to that level, number one. Then we realized, all right, so before booking an expert, a lot of customers want to see the ratings to make sure that they are choosing the right expert. Then we started building a ratings feature. Then we realized when a lot of experts from worldwide started to come into the site, we realized it's very hard to find an expert because you need to go through endless listings to kind of find somebody and book. Then we realized, all right, so you need to have like a sophisticated search. Then we built search. Then again, we realized a lot of customers are kind of reluctant to make to pay money and then make a booking before getting to know more about the expert and kind of talking to them. Then we realized, all right, so we need to have a chat system where the customers can talk to the experts before booking for free, so that they can kind of clarify certain questions to make sure they are choosing the right expert. Then we brought in a chat feature, and now I'm happy to say that the app is very stable with a lot of features. So my point number 5 is you need to make sure that you don't rest in a crisis when you build something. When you innovate in a crisis, you need to make sure you keep improving. So let me just do a quick recap of the whole 5 points before we move on to the question and answers. So the topic that we are talking is how to innovate in a time of crisis, right? The first point is you need to have the right understanding of a crisis. You need to have the right philosophy of the crisis, and you need to know there is always opportunity wherever there is a crisis. Point number 2, you need to be ready to innovate even before the crisis. You need to glorify innovation. You need to be ready to innovate. You need to have all the right tools and people. It can even be just you to innovate. Point number 2. Point number 3, when you choose an idea, make sure you are choosing an idea that's really needed for the user base. Choose a problem that the world needs. It doesn't matter whether it's small or big. Choose a problem and solve a problem that the world needs. When you do that, customers come back to you. Naturally, you start growing. It will be organic traction afterwards. Point number 4 is the execution. In a time of crisis, execution has to be very fast, because it would kind of differentiate the people who win and the people who lose. Being fast, being agile is one of the greatest advantages when you are innovating in the middle of a crisis. And my point number 5 is improving and adapting. After you release a solution, do not ever relax. As an entrepreneur, you will never be able to relax. So always keep improving what you are doing. Most of the time, it's a great way to change things, to improve things based on the market feedback. So when you build something, listen to the market and then see where users are using and then where they are not using, and kind of listen to your customers so that you can improve. So just to recap my whole thoughts on innovating in the middle of a crisis. Crisis has happened in the history of mankind, and it will go away. It will go away. But a crisis would change the way the world works for a very long time. The post-crisis world is already looking very different, and it's going to look very different. That means the previous solutions might not work anymore. The previous way of doing things might not work anymore. So start gathering your thoughts and go through these 5 points so that you can prepare yourself to innovate during the crisis and after, so that we all can build a better world by innovating. Thank you, everybody. I'm looking forward for a very interactive second half of the presentation. Feel free to ask questions. If you have any questions already, please go ahead.
Thank you for your insightful talk, Mr. Mahalingam. So we have one question here. So how do you think the livelihoods of all the Sri Lankans will change after going through the pandemic?
It's a very interesting question. I kind of consider us very fortunate to be an island. So the borders are very easily controlled. And looking at, if you look at the statistics of how Sri Lanka is doing during the pandemic, it's kind of, it's exceptionally an outlier compared to the world statistics. So me and my artificial intelligence team at Rootco, we did a model at the start of it. I think we also posted an article about how to create an AI model so that you can kind of predict the numbers. And when we did that, the numbers didn't look good. We even refrained from posting our findings because the numbers were very bad. But then there are some exceptional parameters in the Sri Lankan ecosystem. One thing is we initiated a lockdown very early before many other countries. And we have strict borders, so we did not have unwanted influx of people from other countries. And it looks like the longer lockdown and the curfew kind of worked, but it's a bit early for us to say right now. Statistically speaking, it's kind of a nervous time because the numbers that you see right now are way too good. So we'll have to wait for another few weeks to see how this turns out to be. But regarding the industry, sorry, and the livelihood of the Sri Lankans, we have already seen the adaptation into technology is skyrocketing. I hear from a lot of CEOs who have proposed and pitched for many technology solutions to many businesses, older businesses to many businesses. A lot of solutions were parked, delayed because maybe not now, right? That's what everybody thinks. But because of this pandemic, a lot of businesses, a lot of organizations, and even countries have started to realize it's extremely important for us to bring in the technological infrastructure and tools so that we can survive a pandemic like that and kind of prepare to a non-disruptive world in the future. So I foresee a lot of industries that were heavily into innovation and technology, which we neglected, would have a great time after the pandemic, because the market, the Sri Lankan market, would be much more ready to embrace technologies in the future. So that's a very good thing. I also think as a whole country, our outlook towards technological infrastructure, I mean the physical infrastructure, would drastically change, because even right now, almost every kid is studying from home through e-learning systems, schools to universities. But there is a big divide. It's very saddening to see, when you are in Colombo or when you are in a city, you don't realize, we take the internet infrastructure for granted. And when I hear stories from kids in smaller villages, they don't even have good internet in many of the places, because it makes sense for a telecommunication company, because they would not invest unless there is a market there for paid users. So it's kind of a chicken egg situation. I think we all will gain kind of a wisdom out of this, to make sure that the base internet infrastructure is freely available to any Sri Lankans in anywhere in the country, because that would be the only way for us to survive through this. And we could take some good examples from the world. For example, we have an office in Europe. We have an office in Estonia. Estonia is one of the most digital countries. In fact, about 99% of the government services are online. Other than getting married and then registering real estate, everything can be done online. I declare my taxes there online, everything, nothing get disturbed. And they are able to do that because as per the Estonian law, internet is a basic human right. And the whole Estonia is covered with free internet. So nobody ever has any disadvantage in accessing. I think that model would become essential for countries like Sri Lanka. We are a small country, we can easily do that. And that would be the only way for us to facilitate situations like this by leveraging the technology. And I also hope that we would invest and spend more energy and time into building a much more robust technological government solutions. And those are kind of the changes that I foresee on the positive side. On the negative side, the crisis is, the repercussions of the crisis is going to last for a long time. Even though the pandemic might end, even though we might find a vaccine to solve this for good, the repercussions of it would last for a long time. I assume it would be at least about 1.5 to 3 years for the whole world to recover. And we are a small country. We are a very small country. We are barely an $80 billion economy. I'm referring to the GDP data last available. So we would suffer financially as a country. We will be going through a really tough time. Just to give you guys a background about how small our GDP is, Amazon's market cap is above $1 trillion. So they could buy Sri Lanka and then still have 95% of their money left or somewhere like that. So it would be a long-lasting financial crisis. A lot of businesses are already going through a tough time. I saw the last survey done in the middle of startups, and I think about 70 to 80% of the startups have said they will be running out of the money within the next 3 months. It's very unfortunate to see. But that will also be kind of a realization point for all of us, to all the entrepreneurs, to businesses, to employees, as to why we need to kind of build everything which is more sustainable and focus on more exports as a country, so that we could, as a country, have a positive balance sheet, and then also kind of build much more sustainable businesses. that's the core negative thing that I'm expecting. But hey, I mean, we have recovered in unimaginable ways in the past, and we will recover from this too. If everybody works together, definitely we will recover. And when we recover, the chances are we will recover very strong and be more sustainable. So, yeah.
Okay, so we have another question here. How do you, what are the key steps for building an innovation? That's the second question we have here. So,
The key steps for
building an innovation.
I think the key steps to, I'm assuming the question is regardless of a crisis, right? I think the key steps to innovate is first finding an idea that is extremely important and that solves a problem, and then the rest is about the second part is building a good team so that you can actually execute your ideas. The earlier you realize you can't do things alone, the better your life would be as an entrepreneur, because you need to leverage the power of people and the skills. And so you need to build a great team. And the number three is just stop talking and get to work. Hustle, like work day and night, and produce what you wanted to produce and get it to the market, and then keep improving that. So that's kind of the, it all starts with being open to innovation, and it ends in working hard. A very simple equation if you look at how every innovation has come out. So yeah.
Okay. So there's another question. During this pandemic, which area would you think that would get most affected because of the pandemic?
I think it's kind of an obvious understanding that the travel industry would be going through the toughest time ever. Because until we find a vaccine, we can't have a free movement in the world, right? So what that means is from end to end, any business or anybody in the travel business, starting from airlines to hotels to Airbnbs, to people who facilitate travels, to tour guides, countries that depends on travel economy, just like us, one of our biggest exports. The travel economy would get really affected, and we are already seeing signs, right? For example, I think British Airways and a few of the main airways have announced a potential shutdown of their operations in London Gatwick Airport. So that means the Gatwick Airport is struggling to survive now. They might have to shut down if nothing works out, or if the government bails out. And if you look into, for example, Cathay Pacific was already battered because of the kind of the instability in Hong Kong and the friction between the Chinese government, and this pandemic has shut down everything that they could ever do. And then recently they had a government bailout, like a couple of days back, about $3 or $4 billion of kind of government is taking a stake ownership in Cathay Pacific. And if you look at a lot of Sri Lankan hotels to many travel companies, the worldwide, nobody is, except the local domestic travelers, it's just, they have lost all their revenue almost. And we do have customers in the travel industry. We work with some of the biggest booking engines worldwide, and their revenue has gone down to single percentage, unbelievable. So I think that's travel industry is going to be the most affected. It's kind of showing a sign of recovery, especially owing it to the domestic tourism. And if countries as a cluster, if a country becomes safe and kind of become COVID-free to the most part, then that would encourage, even if the borders are closed, that would encourage domestic tourism. And that's probably the only way to survive for the next 1 to 2 years. And some of the studies even predict the airlines revenue would take at least 4 to 5 years to get back to the pre-COVID state because of the crisis. So I think that that's going to be the travel is the industry that's going to be most affected. Yeah.
There's another one. What sort of new tools will be used in the industry due to the pandemic? What will be invented, maybe, like, because of the pandemic?
I think we see we see a very high usage of online collaboration tools, right? Like Zoom to Skype lost its race, unfortunately. Such a sad thing for somebody who is there over a decade to lose its prominence. So it's a Zoom to Microsoft Teams, yeah. Slack, all of them are gaining prominence because there is no other way to communicate. And also things like online delivery, ordering, it's getting very popular because people have realized that they don't necessarily need to go to a supermarket to buy things. And they can just order and get it delivered without spending time in going here and there. And that's also kind of gonna train the market to be more comfortable ordering things online. So that's gonna be a great market. And distance services is a market that's gonna grow. We are gonna get very comfortable consuming services online. I always wanted to do yoga, but I never did it, even though I had chances. But during the pandemic, I was all by myself and had a lot of time. And of course, I was going through a lot of stress as well. Then I found an expert, a yoga expert from Europe, again through the app we built, Serve, and then I booked her. And then she came online and she taught me the basic steps of yoga. And it was kind of magical. And then I'm doing yoga every day now. So we are getting comfortable. If a lazy guy like me can't start doing yoga, that means anybody can do it. So we are getting very comfortable consuming services online. The consulting firms that build modern technology, they are going to grow because everybody's long-term strategy is going to shift into technology from retail to many. Everybody's going to shift into online-based and digital services to infrastructure. So if you are in consulting, who does the right work, like software development companies and all, even though it's a short time hit, a long time, it will improve because the market would need more software going forward to keep up with the post-pandemic shift that we are going to have. And apart from like the business kind of shifts, I also see work from home gaining a lot of prominence. Root Code Labs is one of the first companies to announce work from home when the pandemic hit. On the first week, on the first day itself, we announced everybody, don't come to office, stay home and then work. And since we had the existing infrastructure in place, such as Slack and Jira, we also started to realize the productivity is actually high when you work from home. Because employees don't have to kind of waste a lot of time traveling in the bus or in the public transport. And I think that's going to create a shift in the way companies perceive work from home, because out of no option, it showed a clear example as to how productive it can be if done right. So it also has its own side effects. People get bored. It's kind of very lonely to work alone. So you need to organize different things to have fun. We sometimes play very silly games online once in a while so that we all get better, feel better. So those are some of the shifts that is going to happen, and a lot of companies are pivoting into more pandemic-friendly solutions. I think, for example, I saw like some of the biggest companies who did not spend enough time into e-commerce suddenly came up with e-commerce. Uh, uh, Companies like Airbnb are really struggling. It's extremely sad because a lot of people bought properties to rent it out on Airbnb, and they can't pay the mortgages now. So it's going through a tough time. But they did launch Airbnb experiences, so that the previous experiences on Airbnb, such as if you want to go for a walk or like do a wine tasting or learn cooking and all that, now everything is online. So companies are pivoting. So I think some of these industries are going to do really well, and some of these solutions, uh, collaborations to online tools and online services to delivery, they are the big winners out of this pandemic.
Okay, we have a very interesting question here. So it says, why did you choose Estonia as a place to start your company?
A very, very good question. So we have been operating from Sri Lanka for a very long time, right? And now Estonia is kind of our sister base. We still have a company in Sri Lanka, and we work together. um, there were many options for us, but what made me choose Estonia was the ease of doing business there for foreigners, and the kind of infrastructure that they have that could enable a kind of a very easy way of government services, everything online. For example, my Estonian e-residency ID has a chip, and it comes with a reader. So I can always plug it to my computer on the USB port, and then I can sign documents online. I can approve things online. I can pay taxes online. So that frictionless, I'm a big fan of frictionless services. So because of that being frictionless, the infrastructure being frictionless, kind of made it extremely interesting for us, number one. Number two is it is a very small country, but it's part of the European Union. So we, at some point, we had a lot of European Union customers, and it's extremely hard to do business from Sri Lanka to them. Having an entity under the EU regulation gave us a big advantage to be able to sign European Union compatible agreements, to also work on GDPR with much more higher confidence, and just to be able to deploy resources in the European Union whenever needed. So some of our consultants who work for the Estonian root code, they are deployed in one of the biggest banks in Sweden. So that kind of freedom of movement to having a base in the European Union was a big advantage for us. Number three, Estonia is a very innovative country. It's actually considered to be the most digital country in the world. Like I mentioned, almost everything can be done online, and even you can vote online. They are the first country to bring in e-voting. And it's a small country. It's a very small country. And the government is very supportive towards innovation and innovative companies. So the government offers us an amazing support in terms of kind of doing business and doing everything. And I'm not sure you have seen, like, even the government their government team even wrote an article about us when we won't serve, because they were like very happy and proud of what we are doing, having a business in Estonia. So that kind of support and encouragement that we get from a government is also another important reason why I started the business in Estonia. And yeah, I think that kind of answered. But if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to go ahead.
Yes, so there are actually a few more questions, but I think you have answered them while answering the previous questions. So before wrapping up the session, Mr. Mahalingam, would you like to add any concluding remarks, maybe?
I think my concluding remark for everybody, whoever came to this session or watching this live right now, meaning that you really want to innovate on something, and you are somebody who doesn't want to give up in the middle of a crisis, right? So for my message to you is, crisis passes, this too shall pass, but identifying an opportunity in the crisis is very hard, especially because we are in a survival mode. So don't get into that shell. Just be open for innovative ideas. Find out solutions, find out problems that the world requires, and work hard. Work hard, like put all your focus into that whenever you decide to implement something. And keep working hard, and then things will start to fall in line. So my message to everybody who's watching is just keep moving, and keep working hard on the ideas that you have always got fascinated about, and be open to more innovation, be open to more ideas. And don't stop at the idea stage. Just keep implementing. When you work hard, when you keep putting hours and hours into your idea, it will just come to life. It has to come to life. If you are putting 1,000 hours into something together with others, it has to come up well. There's no second thought to it. So just keep moving, work hard, and keep moving. That's it from me. Thank you.
That's an excellent message, I think, for the innovators here. And we have the live Facebook Live going as well. So thank you for the fruitful Q&A session as well. With that, we come to the end of this Let's Talk session organized by IEEE Young Professionals Sri Lanka. We would like to extend our gratitude to you, Mr. Alagan Mahalingam, for the insights you shared with us on the topic, innovation in a time of crisis, and for dedicating your valuable time to enlighten us. We hope your session inspired many innovators tonight. Thank you once again, Mr. Mahalingam. We would also like to thank all the participants for helping us to make this event a success. We hope you will join us in our future Let's Talk sessions as well. So have a good night, and thanks again.